to the West Valley Unitarian Universalist Church in Glendale, Arizona. And welcome to our Zoom church service on this nice, cool morning. I'm so happy that all of you are here to share it. My name is Barry Linden, and I'm your worship associate and co-host for the meeting. Paul Darling is the other co-host and is the one showing the slides and playing the videos and the music as needed. Parts of the service will be recorded and uploaded to our YouTube channel for later viewing. Due to copyright issues, some of the music will not be recorded, and we will also stop the recording prior to doing joys and concerns at the end of the service. You are then able to unmute yourself and give your joy or concern without sharing it with the entire world. Following the formal part of the service, we will keep the meeting running for a while, just to allow you to talk to each other as you would in any fellowship hour. As I said, it's so good to see all of you here today. I really miss seeing all of you in person. Excuse me. While we're not in the same space, I hope that all of us can find the connection that we have missed so much during the past few months. While this service is remote, I want to emphasize that our connections are not. We still share our social and spiritual connections, but in a different way. Here are our opening words by Gwen Matthews. Feel that? Each breath, every inhale, exhale. We are living, breathing, connected. We are the whole, complete, beautiful selves that we were born to be. Feel that? In your bones, in your muscles, in your heart and your blood. That is the extraordinary you. The you who was born for this time, this place, this moment. Feel that? The struggle, the worry, the pain, the loss, the grief. It is still you. You are still whole, complete, beautiful, extraordinary. Feel that. For our announcements, Jim Ray is planning to lead 6 one-hour Zoom discussions regarding transgender inclusion in congregations. They will be on Saturdays at 10 a.m. from November 7th through December 12th. Check the November newsletter for more details or contact Jim Ray. In the future, if you have any announcements that you would like read aloud in the service, please send them to me, and I will make sure that the worship associate has them for the service. Now, to begin our service, we will have the lighting of the chalice. Paul will light the chalice as I read from Elizabeth Harding. We as Unitarian Universalists don't drink from our chalice. Instead, we use it to hold the flame. The circle of the chalice helps keep the fire small. The flame doesn't blind us. It doesn't burn us. It gives us light, so we can see all the different things in the universe, even the invisible ones, because the Unitarian Universalist flame is a light of learning. The flaming chalice is a symbol of learning and of love. It's our symbol, the symbol of Unitarian Universalism. In some denominations, there's a creed that must be agreed to when joining. Since our beliefs are so diverse, we don't have that. Instead, we have aspirations for ourselves and for this community. Please join me in reading our covenant, which Paul will put up on the screen. Good. Love is the doctrine of our congregation. The quest for truth is our holy right, and service is our prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humankind in friendship. Thus do we covenant. When we were meeting in person, Sharon Moore developed some readings on our UU principles, and we included them in our service to remind ourselves about our principle. Here is one. Sharon writes, "We believe that ours is an evolving, living faith tradition. That's why the UUA says our principles must be examined every 15 years. But we can do it each day. Living the living tradition requires us to find ways to incorporate our 7 principles into our everyday lives. These principled minute suggestions provide you ways to reflect on and implement our principles beyond the Sundays that we gather. First principle, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Fake it till you make it. If someone annoys you, make an effort to speak with and listen to that person rather than avoiding the person. Recognize others' inherent worth and allow them dignity by seeing them as people. Choose someone from your life at church or in other relationships whom you find difficult to accept. Number a paper from 1 to 10 and list as many positive attributes of the person as you can. Maybe you filled in all 10 spots. Read the list and reflect on the person. Do you see the person differently now? We will now have our offering, and these words are from Jessica Lynn. I come on Sunday feeling weary, having worn out the snooze button on my alarm clock. I come on Sunday feeling frightened, having seared my eyes reading the latest news. I come on Sunday feeling burdened, having fretted about my workday worries. But I leave Sunday service feeling refreshed, having been renewed by the spirit of love in the community that exists here. I leave Sunday service feeling whole, feeling lifted up by the words of righteous challenge. I leave Sunday service feeling energized and ready to continue our fight for peace and justice. This haven, this refuge, this place of worship, this Zoom meeting, and this wonder exists because we make it so with our contributions. The gifts of our time, our skills, our food, our love, our laughter, and our money. Please join me in giving so that we may continue to have a place that fortifies and challenges us in these trying and troubled times. You may write a check to the church and mail it to the church, or you may mail it to Mark Ollerking, or you may use the PayPal link noted in the chat. Thank you, Joe and Paul, and thank all of you for your generosity. Excuse me. And thank you all for our simple gifts. Our speaker today is Reverend Cathy Corbin-Mannino, whom we are lucky enough to have as our supply minister and our speaker twice a month. Her talk today is entitled, What's Your EQ?
Thank you, Barry and Paul. And a special thank you to Joe for playing one of my favorites for the prelude, the Moonlight Sonata. I know how difficult that is. It's like 6 sharps, isn't it? It's a hard song, but beautiful. In 1990, Yale psychologists John Mayer and Peter Salovey coined the term emotional intelligence. Some researchers claim it is an inborn characteristic, while others suggest that it can be developed with guidance and practice. I think it's a little of both. You probably have heard about, maybe even read, the book called Emotional Intelligence, Why It Can Matter More Than IQ. It was written by psychologist Daniel Goldman in 1995 and was on the New York Times bestseller list for a year and a half and translated into 40 different languages. I had the audiobook so I could listen to it on my way to work. Goldman's definition of emotional intelligence is the array of skills and characteristics such as self-control, perseverance, persistence, and motivation which drive leadership performance. The combination of our thoughts and the feelings we have about those thoughts are the primary influences over our emotional experiences. He believed the quality of our emotional experiences determines our emotional quotient, or EQ. Looking at our own behavioral traits and our ability to process emotional information helps us navigate our environment, and it is the way we measure our EQ, our own emotional intelligence quotient. Without a stable EQ, he contends, your career may be dashed on the rocks, but there is hope because your temperament is not your destiny. There are learned emotional capabilities that can be nurtured in both children and adults, and he defined these emotional competencies as 1. Self-awareness, the ability to recognize and understand your moods, emotions, and drives, as well as their effect on others. 2. Self-regulation, the power to control or redirect disruptive impulses and moods related to our emotions. In other words, the ability to suspend judgment and think before we act. 3. Motivation, a passion to work for reasons beyond money or status, and to pursue these goals with energy and persistence. 4. Empathy, the ability to understand the emotional makeup of other people and possess a skill in handling people's emotional reactions. And 5. Social skill, proficiency in managing relationships and building networks, the ability to find common ground and build rapport. He believed that through careful discernment, you can become skilled at managing your own thinking and feeling. An emotionally intelligent person can appropriately define and accurately label their feelings, which allows them to proactively guide their future actions and behaviors in a positive manner. This allows you flexibility to adjust and adapt successfully to all the emotional experiences you may encounter. The book was written during a time when many books were being published and various workshops and seminars were being held on how to lead successfully and manage effectively. You could pick and choose from a variety of leadership styles. The humble leader, servant leadership, how successful people lead, and the velvet hammer for women in leadership. The company I worked for required the entire management staff to read the book Good to Great. However, since that time, science has pushed back a bit against Goldman's ideas, feeling that this measurement model relied too much on the subjective. Still, the idea of emotional intelligence has stuck. because it has proven useful in explaining successful leadership traits. A special interest to me is that it also set the stage for exploring ideas regarding spiritual intelligence, your SQ. The term spiritual intelligence was used by leadership guru Stephen Covey, author of The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, who believed that spiritual intelligence is heavily guided by your emotional intelligence, and that your SQ, in fact, may be more important than either your IQ or EQ. So fast forward to 2000. Brian McLaren, an author, activist, and theologian, was influenced by this growing field of study called emotional intelligence, and he offered an entirely new way of looking at successful religious leadership qualities. He wrote an essay that I really enjoyed, entitled Dorothy on Leadership. He saw Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz as the very embodiment of emotional intelligence. She was a seeker, a quest creator, a spiritual friend, a team builder, and she was radically inclusive. When Toto pulled the curtain and the wizard is discovered to be just a little man behind a big image, actually a bit of a bully and definitely a fraud, this gave voice to his own discontent at the current larger-than-life male leadership role models. And it made him wonder what image of leadership could replace the great wizard. And it was revealed to him in the very next scene. It wasn't the lion, the scarecrow, or the tin man. It was Dorothy, who at first glance is all wrong as a model of leadership. She is the wrong gender, the wrong age. She's lost. She doesn't have the answers, and she is vulnerable. But those characteristics are the best credentials for modern leadership. She is a listener. She engages her traveling companions by listening to their stories and then helping them discover and give voice to their needs. She creates a safe place and empowers them with her listening heart. She helps her companions trade in their problems for a new adventure. She admits when she's wrong, and she apologizes. She accepts and includes them all on the journey. She may be lost, but she is passionate about seeking a way home. Her style of leadership is empowering and ennobling, not patronizing or paternalistic. She was so effective at empowering that they were all able to discover that what they needed was within themselves all along. They could then say a tearful goodbye to each other and move on to their own adventures. In Ron Heifetz's adaptive leadership models, leaders dealing with the need to change their entire organization's culture found that they first needed to change the minds and hearts of their employees. And they discovered that this is done through, and here we see our role model Dorothy, listening and empathizing, coupled with holding out the vision for the future and paying close attention to the social interactions within their organization, their community, something we as a nation are hungry for. And Heifetz goes on to write that perhaps, most importantly, people need to feel safe in religious community. Transformation, growth, and spiritual depth are not possible when people feel that their congregation is not a safe place. Emotional intelligence helps us understand when people are feeling unwelcome and how to adapt and change so that we and they can feel safe. And it helps us to nurture the sacred covenant to create our beloved community. I think that fits so well with the topic presented by our speaker just last Sunday. Understanding others' emotions, releasing our defensiveness and judgment, helps to create a safe harbor. As long as we are alive, we are constantly thinking and feeling our way through life. Our emotional life is both the effect and the consequence of the thoughts and feelings that predominate our consciousness. Every day we react to our current life circumstances. We experience emotional triggers of past traumas. We encounter challenging people. Developing our potential for both emotional and spiritual intelligence helps us to stay in the love, in the flow of life, especially when our days seem filled with one emotional experience and reaction after another. Even though we are committed to developing our spiritual intelligence, we will still encounter experiences that trigger counterproductive emotional reactions. When they appear, and they will, the spiritually, emotionally intelligent person can adapt to the circumstances by answering that part of the present moment successfully. And this is a major part of our spiritual work. It is our spiritual life that ultimately determines the quality of our emotional experience. The quality of our emotional life is the evidence of our spiritual progress. This requires that we be present to our own emotional state, even when, especially when, we are having a negative experience. We can be angry, anxious, afraid, or even depressed. It's okay. We are emotional beings, and we do not have to do it perfectly. By being present to our own emotional experience in a non-judgmental way is vital to our success in being spiritually intelligent. Learning to accept our own shortcomings and practice self-forgiveness over and over is essential for success. Emotions, particularly those of the negative and destructive quality, mark the spot where we may need to dig a little deeper. A negative emotional experience reveals to us that something within us requires healing, not that something is wrong with us. Developing a sense of appreciation and gratitude for our own emotional life, even through the challenges, serves our spiritual growth in so many ways. In addition to improving our own interior life, emotional and spiritual intelligence are invaluable in developing compassion for others. Every emotional experience we have will either empower or disempower us. We are disempowered when we react based on embedded stories of past failures that we have destructively told ourselves over and over again. And we are empowered when we respond in alignment with the truth of our higher nature. That you, Barry was talking about earlier. We are in control of our responses, and spiritual intelligence helps to ensure that our emotional response to life's circumstances is stable and reflect our better angels. Although we can't control all the thoughts and feelings that come upon us, we are ultimately in charge of the thoughts and feelings we allow to continually inhabit our consciousness. A friend of mine used to say that, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will not set up my tent there." When we stay and camp out in an environment of negative emotions, we stifle our creative power. If we linger and get stuck there, we block the flow of the good that is available, and it interrupts our personal peace. A negative and destructive emotional life carries a heavy toll on our life's potential. It blocks us from expressing the truth of our own enlightened, woke self. But the good news is that it is only a temporary block. We can block the truth, but we can never destroy it. We can ignore it, but we can never lose it. And we can actually unblock it. Developing our emotional and spiritual intelligence is a choice we make, an act of the power of our own will. And the first step in doing that is simply to become willing to do so. And then follow through on that intention by connecting to our own internal, indwelling, loving presence. Allowing that loving presence to permeate the activity of our thoughts, feelings, and emotions. It may not be possible for everyone to have a psychotherapist, but you can become your own therapist. After all, Freud analyzed himself. It all starts with learning how to listen to your feelings. While it may not always be easy, developing the ability to tune into your own emotions is the first and perhaps most important step. Norman Rosenthal, psychiatrist and transcendental meditation practitioner, wrote 10 ways to up your EI quotient. I'll share just a couple that I think may be the most relevant to us in this setting. 1. Don't interrupt or change the subject. If feelings are uncomfortable, we may want to avoid them by interrupting or distracting. Sit down at least twice a day and ask, how am I feeling? It may take a little time for the feelings to come to the surface, but just allow yourself that small space of time, uninterrupted. You could try rating your overall sense of well-being on a scale of 1 to 10, like the medical staff do for pain, and then write the scores down in a daily log. Then 2, see if you can find connections between your feelings and other times you have felt the same way. When experiencing a difficult feeling, ask yourself, when have I had this feeling before? If your feelings seem extreme one day, take a minute or two to think about any ideas or associations that seem to be connected with the feeling. You may find that feelings are cyclic, and just seeing a pattern can help you move out of that cycle or at least release some of the power that it holds over you. Doing this may help you realize whether your current emotional state is really reflective of the current situation or related to a time in your past, or both. 3, if you don't know how you're feeling specifically enough to even accurately define it, ask someone else. Ask someone who knows you and whom you trust, how am I coming across? You may find the answer surprising and illuminating. And then 4, connect your feelings with your thoughts. Oftentimes our feelings contradict what we think or what we would like to think. That's normal. Listening to your feelings is like listening to all the witnesses in a court case. The evidence may be contradictory, flimsy, or point on, but only by admitting all the evidence will you be able to reach the best verdict. 5, tune into your unconscious feelings. So, how can you be conscious of your unconscious feelings? What has worked for me best is to analyze my dreams by paying special attention to those that are repetitive or are charged with powerful emotions. I have a recurring dream for years, different venues, different ways that it has shown up, but it's the same recurring dream. I'm on stage, and I have no idea what play I'm in. I don't know what song I'm supposed to be singing. I don't know what my next line is. I don't know what the director wants. Everyone else seems to know what they're doing. They're all in costume, except me. These dreams have alerted me to my need to affirm myself, let go of self-doubt and worry, and look at what I am really afraid of, what I am feeling overwhelmed by. Where do I feel unprepared or ineffective? What problem do I feel unskilled at resolving? If that doesn't speak to you, you can try free association. While in a relaxed state, just allow your thoughts to roam free and watch where they go. And 6, know when enough is enough. There comes a time to stop looking inward and know it's time to shift your focus outward. Studies have shown that encouraging people to dwell upon negative feelings can amplify those feelings, and you end up feeling worse. Emotional intelligence involves not only the ability to look within, but also to be present to and aware of the world around you. And that point brings up the dark side of EI. Adam Grant, an organizational psychologist at the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School of Business, writes, since the publication of Daniel Goldman's bestseller, emotional intelligence has been touted by leaders, policymakers, and educators as the solution to a wide range of social problems. If we can teach our children to manage emotions, the argument goes, we'll have less bullying and more cooperation. If we can cultivate emotional intelligence among managers and doctors, we'll have more caring workplaces and more compassionate healthcare. All of that is true. Emotional intelligence is important, but this enthusiasm has obscured a dark side. New evidence shows that when people hone their emotional skills, they become better at manipulating others. When you know what others are feeling, you can tug at their heartstrings and motivate them to act, sometimes even against their own best interests. And when you're good at controlling your own emotions, you can learn to disguise your true feelings. Social scientists have begun to document this dark side of emotional intelligence, and emerging research led by a University of Cambridge professor revealed that when a leader gives an inspiring speech filled with emotion, the audience was less likely to scrutinize the message and remembered less of its real content. The author calls this the awestruck effect, but it might just as easily be described as the dumbstruck effect. Leaders who master emotions can rob us of our capabilities and capacities to reason if their values are out of step with our own, and the results can be devastating, as we have seen. Shining a light on this dark side of emotional intelligence is the mission of a research team led by University College London professor Martin Kilduff. According to these experts, emotional intelligence helps people disguise one set of emotions while expressing another for personal gain. Some emotionally intelligent people intentionally shape their emotions to fabricate favorable impressions of themselves. Professor Kilduff's team writes, "The strategic disguise of one's own emotions and manipulation of others' emotions for strategic ends are behaviors evident not only on Shakespeare's stage, but also in the offices and corridors where power and influence are traded." Emotional intelligence, like any skill, can be used for good or evil. Which brings me back to Stephen Covey and yet another one of his books, The Eighth Habit. In that book, Covey wrote that spiritual intelligence is the central and most fundamental of all, because it is the source of guidance for all the other intelligences. When spiritual intelligence is our foundation, then we will avoid the dark side, the destructive use of emotional intelligence. And I'd like to leave you with just a little bit of wisdom from the Tin Man. You people with hearts have something to guide you, and so you need never worry about doing wrong. May that be so. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Cathy, for another great sermon, and you've given us so much to think about. Please join me in reading our mission statement, which Paul will put on our screen. And even though I will be the only one you can hear on the screen, please read it with me. We agree to provide a safe place to celebrate diversity, draw inspiration for living better lives, foster social and environmental justice, and compassionately support each other in our spiritual searches. As I extinguish the chalice, I want to thank everyone who made this service possible. Paul for hosting and developing the music, Joe and Paul for the music, and Reverend Cathy for our talk. I also want to thank all those who work behind the scenes to make this church a going concern, who take care of the grounds, who pay the bills, who do the bookkeeping, who manage the volunteers. Thank you. Our closing words are by Amy Zucker Morgenstern. When we take fire from our chalice, it does not become less, it becomes more. And so we extinguish our chalice, but we take its light and warmth with us, multiplying the power by all of our lives and sharing it with the world. We will now stop the recording